The door swung open, and there stood Mark, shirtless, watching me. Sophie smirked, her voice light and teasing. She liked what she saw. My pulse raced, my breath catching in my throat. Before I could react, she shoved me forward. I stumbled into the room, barely catching my balance, just as the door clicked shut behind me. The silence was thick and stifling in this sprawling California suburban house, with no way out. His voice, low and amused, broke the tension. "Took you long enough." Before we dive in, take a quick second to like this video and hit subscribe. It's fast, free, and helps more than you know. Plus, you won't miss the next story. Thanks for being here. Now, let's begin. Sophie threw herself back on the plush sectional sofa in the spacious living room, swirling the last bit of wine in her glass before letting out a satisfied sigh. "Okay, so Mark. That man knows exactly what he's doing." Emma smirked, already intrigued. "Oh, God, what happened?" She shot me a knowing look. "Girl, the way he kissed me. I swear my brain just shut off. His hands were all over me, so confident, as if he already knew every move that would drive me crazy." I laughed, shaking my head. "Okay, now you're just bragging," she grinned, leaning in slightly. "No, I'm warning you. The second he touched my neck, it was game over." I forgot how to breathe. I raised an eyebrow, tilting my head. "So, you're saying he ruined you for other men?" "Completely," she said, sighing dramatically as she set her glass down on the glass coffee table. "I mean, when a guy takes control like that, it does things to me." I fanned myself with my hand, grinning. "All right, I need a cold shower just listening to this." Sophie laughed, kicking her feet up onto the sofa. "Trust me, you would too," still smirking. I stood up and stretched. "Okay, I need to pee before this conversation gets out of hand." I turned and headed down the hardwood-floored hallway, past framed family photos, still half lost in our conversation. When I reached for the door handle and pushed it open, I realized it wasn't the bathroom, it was Mark's room. My breath hitched. He was shirtless. The warm California evening air clinging to the room, the faint scent of clean skin and cologne wrapping around me. He stood near the sleek wooden dresser, a towel in one hand, running it through his damp hair, as if this were just another night. I stood frozen, wide-eyed, paralyzed, completely mortified. Then he turned and smiled. "Well," he said, his voice low, smooth, and far too relaxed. "I didn't expect an audience tonight." My stomach dropped. I slapped a hand over my eyes, my face burning. "Oh my God. Words failed me as a wave of humiliation washed over me. His chuckle was slow and deep, thoroughly amused. "What's the matter?" he mused, his tone casual. "You've never seen a man like this before." I choked on air, every nerve igniting at once. A rush of heat spread across my face and neck. What was I supposed to say? The soft rustle of fabric sliding over skin barely reached my ears over my pounding heartbeat. "The bathroom's down the hall, sweetheart," he added, still smiling. "Unless you meant to come in here." I made a strangled noise, half gasp, half whimper, before spinning on my heel and bolting out, slamming the bathroom door behind me. My back hit the door as I gasped for air, my chest rising and falling too fast, my hands trembling. What just happened? I gripped the marble sink, my breath uneven, trying to steady myself. The cool surface pressed against my fingertips, but it did nothing to calm the warmth under my skin. I should have laughed it off, brushed it aside as an awkward mistake, but Mark's image lingered, that slow, knowing smile, the way he stood, completely at ease, watching me. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the counter. I'd seen men shirtless before, but none had made me feel this way. There was something about Mark, effortless and assured, like he didn't need to prove anything. He hadn't tried to affect me. Yet here I was, shaken. I shut my eyes and took a deep breath. Enough. Turning on the faucet, I splashed cold water on my face, hoping it would snap me out of it. The relief was fleeting, lasting only a second before the heat crept back. I needed to leave, wiping my face dry. I forced my legs to move down the hallway, past the photos, back to Sophie. By the time I reached the living room, one thing was clear: the feeling hadn't faded, and I wasn't sure it would. Sophie glanced up as I sank onto the sofa, a knowing grin spreading across her face. "Took you long enough." I forced a laugh, trying to sound normal, hoping she wouldn't notice the warmth still clinging to my skin. "Yeah, wrong door." Her eyebrow lifted as she studied me. "Wrong door." I let out a slow breath, swirling my drink, keeping my voice casual. "Yeah, I walked into your dad's room by accident." Sophie snorted, her amusement immediate. "Oh, shit, did you see him?" My pulse jumped, but I shrugged it off. Yeah." Her eyes widened and she burst into laughter. "Oh my God, was he like—" She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. I nearly choked on my drink, my face heating up again. "Sophie, what?" she asked, innocently, though her smirk said otherwise. "Was he decent?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My face was burning, and she read me instantly. Her jaw dropped before she gasped, sitting up straighter. "Oh my God, you saw him naked?" I swallowed hard, words fumbling out. "It wasn't, I didn't mean to." She threw her head back, laughing, shaking her head in disbelief. "Damn, lucky you." I blinked, my brain scrambling to process her words. "Excuse me?" Sophie smirked, leaning back against the sofa as if this were casual. "I mean, you could do worse." My stomach flipped as I stared at her. "Sophie, what the hell?" She shrugged, unfazed. "Look, I love my dad, but I'm not blind. I know women think he's hot. Wouldn't be the first time a friend's had a little interest." My heart pounded as her words sank in. Then she smiled again. Playful, but with something else in her expression that made my breath catch. "If you wanted a taste, I wouldn't mind." I froze. "You're joking." She tilted her head, her smirk deepening. "Am I?" I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. My skin felt too warm, my thoughts stuck in Mark's room. Sophie's gaze flickered over me, taking in every detail. She saw it. She knew. A slow, knowing smile spread across her face before she leaned forward. "We could find out." My stomach clenched, my pulse hammering. "Sophie." Before I could get another word out, she grabbed my wrist and pulled me to my feet. This was happening. Every step toward the staircase sent my pulse racing faster. And the worst part, I didn't stop her. Sophie knocked, and the door swung open instantly, like Mark had been expecting us. He stood there, shirtless, leaning against the frame, his gaze settling on me before flicking to Sophie. He was calm, unbothered, completely in control. Sophie smiled, clearly pleased with what she saw. My stomach flipped. Before I could react, she nudged me forward, hard. I stumbled inside, barely catching my balance, and the door clicked shut behind me. The silence was thick and unrelenting. I didn't move, neither did he. Then a low chuckle broke the tension. I forced myself to look up, my heart hammering. Mark exhaled, shaking his head, as if I were something amusing, as if he already knew. "You sure took your time," he said. Before I could react, before I could breathe, he moved one step, then another, unhurried, intentional. My pulse skipped. I should have backed up. I didn't. I couldn't. By the time I realized it, he was standing right in front of me, his scent clean, warm, with something darker underneath wrapping around me, heady and intoxicating. His hand found my waist, his fingers brushing my jaw, tilting my face up, slow and deliberate. Then he kissed me. It was deep, unyielding, a full-body claim. I gasped into his mouth, my body reacting before my mind could process. His grip tightened, fingers pressing me closer, grounding me in the moment. He owned it completely, his pace controlled, his mouth demanding, devouring me as if he had all the time in the world. I barely noticed as he guided me backward, step by step until the backs of my knees hit the bed. I fell onto the mattress, my pulse pounding. He followed but didn't pin me beneath him. Instead, he leaned back against the pillows, watching me, his smile deepening. "Let me see how much you want this," he said, his voice low and commanding. My stomach tightened, a slow coil of heat unfurling inside me. I swallowed hard, my breath shaky, but I moved hesitant at first, then bolder. My hands slid down his stomach, feeling the hard lines of muscle flex beneath my touch. His skin was warm, radiating heat where my lips hovered, anticipation buzzing between us. The second I brushed against him, his body reacted, a deep, satisfied sound rumbling in his chest, low and undeniable. His fingers threaded through my hair, guiding me, not forceful, just steady, controlling, leading me exactly where he wanted. His patience was infuriating and intoxicating. Every slow exhale, every shift of his body, every low murmur of approval pushed me further. Then, suddenly, he moved fast, effortless, absolute. Before I could process it, I was on my back, the mattress cushioning the shift. His weight pressed into me, solid, unwavering, inescapable. I gasped as heat surged through me, my body surrendering before my mind could catch up. His knee parted my thighs, slow and teasing, his hand sliding over mine, grounding me beneath him. His free hand traced a deliberate path down my side, unhurried but full of intent. I arched beneath him, my body betraying me, aching, restless, desperate for more. A soft, low chuckle vibrated against my skin, dark and knowing. He let the moment stretch, the tension thickening, before whispering against my jaw, "Now I have you all to myself." Then he pulled me deeper. His movements were slow at first, deepening, pulling me further under his control. His rhythm was precise, measured, designed to unravel me one breath at a time. I gasped, fingers digging into his back, his shoulders, anything to anchor myself. The heat coiled tighter, higher, too much, too fast, and then I broke apart beneath him, lost in the heat, the weight, the moment. I barely had time to catch my breath before he shifted, moving with that same unshakable confidence. His hands skimmed lower, teasing, exploring, commanding. His lips dragged fire across my skin. A sharp gasp slipped from my lips before I could stop it. Heat exploded through me, sharp and consuming, as his mouth travelled lower, his touch precise, intentional, unravelling me piece by piece. I twisted beneath him, hands searching blindly for something to hold onto his shoulders, his hair, anything to keep me grounded. But he wasn't rushing. He took his time, every slow, deliberate movement sending electricity through my veins, winding me up, pulling me higher, tighter, until the moment stretched, overwhelming, consuming. I was lost in the warmth of him, drowning in sensation. Even as the aftershocks rolled through me, he held me there, savouring it, drawing out every last flicker of pleasure until I was nothing but breathless warmth in his arms. Until I was his. I barely had time to breathe before he was over me again, watching with those dark, knowing eyes, as if he could see every tremor running through me. This time, he didn't hold back. His movements were slow, purposeful, deliberate, and I matched him, my body already attuned to him, answering every shift, every touch. The pressure built again higher, sharper, tightening with every breath. Then it snapped. I sank into him, pulling him with me. A deep, ragged sound tore from his throat, his rhythm breaking apart as he let go. Completely lost in the moment with me. I felt everything, the weight of him, the heat between us, the way he let himself fall just as hard, just as completely, until there was nothing left between us. The world outside didn't exist, only this, only him, only us. I lay there, breathless, the weight of what had happened sinking in. My heart still pounded, my skin still warm, as the reality of the moment settled over me like a heavy blanket. Sophie had pushed me into that room, but had she really? Or had I been stepping forward all along? Drawn to Mark's quiet confidence, his unshakable presence. The question gnawed at me as I stared at the ceiling, the faint hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. Mark shifted beside me, his arm brushing mine as he propped himself up on one elbow. His gaze was softer now, but still piercing, as if he could read every thought racing through my mind. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost gentle, but with that same undercurrent of control that had undone me. I swallowed, nodding, though my voice felt stuck. "Yeah," I managed, barely above a whisper. "Just processing." He chuckled, the sound warm and unhurried. "Take your time." He leaned back, giving me space, but his presence still filled the room. Inescapable. I pulled the sheet closer, suddenly aware of my own vulnerability, the way my body still hummed with the memory of his touch. The door was still closed, the house quiet beyond it. I wondered where Sophie was, what she was thinking. Had she really meant to push me into this? Or was it just her reckless, teasing nature? The thought made my stomach twist. I'd known Sophie since our freshman year at UCLA, our late-night study sessions turning into wine-fueled confessions. She was bold, unapologetic, always pushing boundaries. But this, This was different. I sat up, running a hand through my hair, trying to anchor myself. "I should go," I said, more to myself than to Mark. He raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "You sure?" "No, I wasn't." That was the problem. Every part of me wanted to stay, to sink back into the warmth of him, to let this moment stretch forever. But the weight of reality, Sophie, our friendship, the fact that Mark was her father, pressed against me. I nodded, firmer this time. Yeah, he didn't argue, just watched as I gathered my clothes, his gaze steady but not pressuring. I dressed quickly, avoiding his eyes, though I could feel them on me. As I reached for the door, he spoke again, his voice calm but deliberate. "Emma?" I paused, my hand on the knob, my heart skipping. "Yeah, this doesn't have to be the end of it." His words hung in the air, simple but heavy with implication. I didn't turn around, didn't trust myself to meet his gaze. Instead, I nodded once and slipped out, the door clicking softly behind me. The hallway was dim, the glow of the living room light spilling faintly from below. I moved quietly, my bare feet silent on the hardwood, my mind a tangle of guilt, desire, and confusion. When I reached the living room, Sophie was still on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, a half-empty wineglass beside her. She looked up, her grin immediate, like nothing had changed. "Well?" she asked, her tone teasing but sharp, like she already knew. "How was it?" I froze, my face flushing. "Sophie, She laughed, waving a hand. "Relax, Emma. I'm not mad. I told you I wouldn't mind." She leaned forward, her eyes glinting with mischief. "So spill. Was it as good as I said?" I sank onto the sofa, my legs unsteady. "You're insane," I muttered. But there was no heat in it. My mind was still upstairs, still with Mark, his hands, his voice, the way he'd taken control so effortlessly. Sophie tilted her head, studying me. "You're freaking out, aren't you?" "A little," I admitted, my voice small. "This is a lot," she shrugged, sipping her wine. "Life's too short to overthink. You wanted it. He wanted it. What's the problem?" The problem was everything. The problem was that I couldn't stop thinking about him, that my body still ached for him, that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and Sophie, sitting there so casually, made it worse. "He's your dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And," she said, unbothered, "he's hot, and you're both adults. I'm not going to cry about it." I stared at her, searching for any hint of jealousy or discomfort, but there was none. She meant it. She really didn't care, and that somehow made it harder to process. I leaned back, closing my eyes, trying to sort through the chaos in my head. The next morning, the California sun streamed through the kitchen windows, bright and unforgiving. I sat at the island, nursing a coffee, while Sophie rummaged through the fridge for orange juice. Mark was nowhere to be seen, and I wasn't sure if I was relieved or disappointed. Part of me wanted to see him, to gauge how he'd act, whether last night had meant anything to him. Another part wanted to run, to pretend it never happened. Sophie plopped down across from me, her hair messy from sleep. "You're quiet," she said, pouring juice into a glass. "Still freaking out?" I forced a smile. "Maybe a little." She rolled her eyes, but her expression softened. "Look, if you're worried about me, Don't be... I meant what I said. And if you're worried about him... She trailed off, smirking. He's not the type to make a big deal out of things. You'll be fine. I nodded. But her words didn't ease the knot in my chest. Fine wasn't what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. But it wasn't that. The memory of Mark's touch, his voice, the way he'd looked at me, it was all still too vivid, too real. The back door opened, and Mark walked in, a towel slung over his shoulder, sweat glistening on his skin from a morning run. My heart lurched, but I kept my eyes on my coffee, pretending to be engrossed in the steam rising from it. He grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, his movements casual, like nothing had changed. "Morning, girls," he said, his voice easy. But I caught the brief glance he sent my way, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Morning," Sophie chirped, oblivious or pretending to be. I mumbled a reply, my voice barely audible. He lingered for a moment, leaning against the counter, sipping his water. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable but charged, like he was waiting for something. I risked a glance, and our eyes met. His expression was calm, but there was a weight to it, a silent acknowledgement of last night. My pulse quickened, and I looked away, focusing on my coffee again. "Got plans today?" he asked, his tone neutral, directed at both of us. Sophie launched into a ramble about a beach trip she wanted to take, but I barely heard her. My mind was stuck on Mark, on the way his presence filled the room, on the memory of his hands on me. I needed to get out of here, to clear my head. But part of me didn't want to leave. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Sophie dragged me to the beach. The California sun beating down as we sprawled on towels, the sound of waves crashing in the background. She chatted about classes, guys, her plans for the summer. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Mark. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, his smirk, his touch, the way he'd made me feel so completely his. "You're distracted?" Sophie said, nudging me with her elbow as we packed up our things. I forced a laugh, just tired. She didn't buy it, but she didn't push, just gave me a knowing look before changing the subject. By the time we got back to the house, the sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the neighbourhood. Mark was in the backyard, firing up the grill, the smell of charcoal drifting through the air. "Dinner's on me tonight," he called as we walked in, his voice carrying that same easy confidence. I avoided his gaze, focusing on helping Sophie set the table, but I could feel him watching me, his presence like a magnet I couldn't escape. We ate outside, the patio lights casting a warm glow over the wooden table. Sophie kept the conversation light, but every time Mark spoke, my heart skipped. He was careful, never too direct, but there were moments, small, fleeting glances, the brush of his hand as he passed me a plate that sent heat rushing through me. After dinner, Sophie disappeared to take a call, leaving me alone with Mark as we cleared the table. The silence was heavy, the air thick with unspoken words. I kept my eyes on the dishes, stacking them carefully, but I could feel his gaze on me. "Emma," he said, his voice low, pulling me out of my thoughts. I looked up, my heart pounding. "Yeah," he stepped closer. Not enough to crowd me, but enough to make the space between us feel charged. "You've been quiet all day." I swallowed, my mouth dry. "Just thinking about last night." His tone was even, but his eyes held mine, steady and searching. I nodded, unable to lie. "Yeah." He didn't say anything for a moment, just watched me. his expression unreadable. Then he stepped closer, his voice dropping. "If you want to forget it, we can. But if you don't..." He let the words hang, heavy with possibility. My breath caught. I should have said I wanted to forget it, to pretend it never happened, to go back to normal, but I didn't. I couldn't. "I don't know what I want," I admitted, my voice barely audible. He smiled, a small, knowing curve of his lips. "That's okay. You don't have to decide now." He stepped back, giving me space, but his words stayed with me, lingering like a promise. The next few days were a strange dance of avoidance and tension. I stayed over at Sophie's house, unable to bring myself to leave, caught in a pull I couldn't explain. Mark was always there, in the background, his presence a constant reminder of what had happened. Every glance, every casual brush of his hand, sent my pulse racing. Sophie noticed, of course, but she didn't push, just smirked and let it slide. One night, as we sat in the living room watching a movie, Mark joined us, settling into an armchair with a beer. The room felt smaller with him in it, the air charged. Sophie fell asleep halfway through, her head lolling against the sofa, leaving me hyper-aware of Mark's presence. He didn't say anything, just watched the screen, but I could feel his attention on me, like a current running beneath the surface. When the movie ended, he stood, stretching. "I'm heading to bed," he said, his voice casual, but his eyes met mine for a moment longer than necessary. "Night, Emma." "Night," I replied, my voice unsteady. I stayed awake long after Sophie had gone to bed, staring at the ceiling of the guest room. My mind raced, torn between guilt and desire, between what I should do and what I wanted. Mark's words echoed in my head. This doesn't have to be the end of it. The idea was terrifying and thrilling, a temptation I didn't know how to resist. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen, alone, making coffee. The house was quiet. Sophie still asleep. He glanced up as I walked in, his expression neutral but his eyes warm. "Morning," he said, pouring a second cup and sliding it toward me. "Thanks," I mumbled, wrapping my hands around the mug, the warmth grounding me. We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. Then he spoke, his voice low. "You've been avoiding me." I looked down at the coffee, my cheeks heating. "Maybe." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "You don't have to. I meant what I said. Emma, no pressure. But I'm here." I looked up, meeting his gaze, and something in me shifted. The guilt was still there, the fear of what this meant for me and Sophie, but the pull was stronger. I nodded, a small, hesitant gesture. "Okay," he smiled, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his calm, controlled exterior, a flicker of something real, something vulnerable. It made my heart ache, made me want to reach out, to close the distance between us. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a quiet rhythm, stolen glances, brief touches, moments when Sophie wasn't around. It wasn't just physical, though, that was there, undeniable, electric. It was the way he listened when I talked, the way he seemed to see me, really see me, in a way no one else had. I told myself it was temporary, a reckless fling I'd get over, but every time I was with him, it felt like more. Sophie, true to her word, didn't care. If anything, she seemed amused, like she'd orchestrated the whole thing. "You're happy," she said one day, as we sat on the beach, the waves crashing in the distance. That's what matters. But I wasn't sure if I was happy or just lost in something I couldn't control. Mark was a force, steady and unshakable. And I was caught in his orbit. Every touch, every look, pulled me deeper, and I didn't know how to stop. One night, as we lay in his bed, the moonlight filtering through the blinds, he traced a finger along my arm. His touch light but deliberate. "What are we doing, Emma?" he asked, his voice quiet but serious. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I don't want to stop." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, pulling me closer. "Then we won't." I lay there, his arms around me, the weight of what we were doing settling over me. Sophie had pushed me into that room, but I'd chosen to stay. Would you take a chance like this if it was handed to you? Or would you walk away and regret it forever? Be honest. I want to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. Your support keeps these stories coming. See you in the next one.